The first talk of the day is by Filipp. He'll be talking about secure evaluation of authenticated private functions. Uh, let's invite Jan.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. This is joint work together with Protik and Thomas with the paper currently under submission. And in the talk, I will show you what we mean by authenticated private function evaluation, why we actually need it, and what were the challenges and how we achieved it. So I want to start with pay-as-you-drive dynamic car insurance fees. In this scenario, we have an insurance company that offers dynamic insurance fees to its customers, where the customers install some sensor box in their cars, measuring when and how long the car was used, the speed and acceleration data, as well as some location data where the car is used. And the insurance company, on the other hand, holds a function which can be used to calculate the dynamic fee for each customer individually. Now the question is, what do they do in order to get the amount of money the customer needs to pay? As it is done by now, the customer just sends all their data to the insurance company, who then evaluates the function and tells the customer what to pay. This, of course, leaks all the customer's data to the company, which we want to avoid, as this can be exploited and used to track customers and profile them. Another possibility would be to just publish the function such that the customer can calculate the amount to pay themselves and tell the company. This, of course, is not in the interest of the company, as they want to keep their private function private, as it is treated as intellectual property. Yeah, an obvious choice would be to use an MPC protocol. This would also have the opportunity that both parties can be sure that this exactly function gets evaluated, but still the function must be public. The customer data is protected, but the function is still leaked. So there's another option. We use PFE, where the function is treated as private input by the company, and both parties jointly compute the amount of money that needs to be paid. I want to tell you why this is still not enough and what we need instead, then discuss the main challenges, how our protocol looks like, and then go through efficiency and benchmark results. So looking at the standard notion of PFE, what could go wrong here? First of all, when considering two customers or multiple customers, the company might choose different or arbitrarily different functions for each customer, and therefore may discriminate the customers based on other data than the driving statistics. For example, personal information, their address or something else, as these customers are not anonymized within this contract with the insurance company. Also with one customer, this function can be arbitrarily chosen, so it might not satisfy legal requirements and might be some malicious function, and the customer does not have any control about it. It also might leak information in the worst case if the company just provides the identity function. Both the customer and the company just learn the private input, and therefore it leaks the sensitive data from the customer. A common approach to avoid it is to just not provide the company with the result, which in fact prevents practical use cases. So let's see what we want to have instead. Instead, we want to have some possibility to check whether the function satisfies certain criteria. Therefore, we need a trusted third party. We call it a certification authority, which is trusted by the company to not leak the function and by the customer to properly check this function. So company provides the function to the certification authority, who then checks if the requirements are met, and if so, it signs this function and publishes the certificate to all customers. All these customers then use the signature as public input to the PFE protocol, and inside the protocol the signature must be verified, and only if the function, the verification on the signature is correct, we output a function, otherwise we just output an empty string. So in summary, we still want to have input and function privacy as for standard PFE. We want to have this trusted certification authority to only be available during a one-time setup phase and not during each PFE protocol execution. And we of course want the company to also be able to learn the result without endangering input privacy. Okay, first recap how we can achieve PFE. This can be done by utilizing an arbitrary MPC protocol, in our case a two-party protocol, and evaluating a public circuit that you see as a public circuit, where the programming bits represent the function such that the universal circuit in fact evaluates the function f. So this can be generalized to authenticating inputs to an MPC protocol. I want to briefly mention a short selection of works that already looked at it. First of all, a work from 2024 about authenticated MPC. This could be simply used to get authenticated PFE for the multi-party setting, but it's not usable in our scenario as it requires an honest majority and therefore is not suitable for the two-party setting. A work from 2016 looked at 2PC protocols with arbitrary predicate checks. This could also be used for authenticated PFE by setting the predicate check to be a signature verification. However, this implements this predicate check inside the MPC protocol, and therefore it's quite expensive to do the verification. And a third work from 2017 looks at certified inputs for garbled circuits protocols in specific, but they run in a 2+1 setting where the certification authority must be present for each and every PFE evaluation. So we come to these two main challenges. First of all, input consistency. We somehow need to ensure that the function stays the same between the verification step and the PFE protocol itself, such that the malicious company cannot change the function after it was verified to then evaluate another one. And the second one, we require efficient verification, especially for large inputs, as these programming bits are usually of size larger than 2 to the 20 bits. Okay, looking at our solution or how we approached it, we still use, or we use this universal circuit approach on top of an arbitrary 2PC protocol, and we let the company send its programming bits to the certification authority. Now, the intuitive approach to gain efficiency would be to run the verification outside of the MPC protocol, but this has the disadvantage that we need some additional machinery to ensure the input consistency, which is non-trivial, and therefore we use the approach to enter the certification to the MPC protocol and run the verification inside to satisfy input consistency. In the end, we still need some check if the verification is correct, and if it is correct, we output Y, or we output the function result, and otherwise an empty string. So in this way, here the input, the programming bits, are the same input wires for both the universal circuit and the verification circuit, and therefore input consistency is achieved. However, when looking at efficient verification, as already mentioned before, the signature verification requires public key cryptography, which is expensive to run inside the protocol, so we need to come up with some other idea. Our idea was to replace it by a commitment scheme that can be instantiated with only with only symmetric crypto. And to do so, we require the company to commit to its programming bits first by sampling a random value R, and then run a commitment, and then send the commitment and the randomness to the certification authority. This then enables the CA to check, first of all, does the function satisfy our requirements? Then is the commitment really a commitment to this provided programming bits? And if so, it might sign the commitment and publishes it. Here, publishing the commitment does not reveal anything about the function because of the hiding property, and each customer can then verify the signature on this commitment locally without running it in MPC. If this local verification is successful, then the customer will run the PFE protocol with the commitment as public input, and we can then inside the protocol just evaluate or re-evaluate the commitment to then check if this is the same as the locally verified public commitment. So now what about the efficiency of the verification? Well, it of course depends on the commitment now. So we first look at the asymptotic costs. We consider a function with n gates, which results in programming bits of the size about 3 n log n. So this is the complexity or communication complexity for the universal circuit. And for the commitment scheme, we need some MPC-friendly commitment scheme, as traditional schemes require also heavy algebraic structures, for example. So we came up with our own commitment scheme that is supposed to be MPC-friendly, meaning that it's only based on symmetric crypto. It uses a block cipher and a hash function. It has size linear in its input size and depth being constant. Different than traditional commitment schemes, it's non-succinct, meaning that the commitment is of the size of the message. But therefore, we also get asymptotic communication in the size of n log n. And additionally, for the comparison, we also need at least linear many AND gates in the input size, so also of n log n. However, this equality check can be evaluated outside of the MPC protocol if the protocol allows delayed opening, such that the customer can first get a result, then checks it locally, and if it's correct, then it can open the output labels to the company. So in total, we get a cost of n log n. Now, this does not say a lot for efficiency, so we take a look at the concrete costs. You can see here in this plot the n size per input bit for a certain amount of input bits. You can see in blue and in green our commitment that we call SCAM. For the blue line, it shows an instantiation with standardized primitives, in this case with AES and SHA-3, which is quite expensive with around 40 bits per input, 40 AND gates per input bit. And in orange in the middle, this is kind of the MPC-friendly baseline. It's a standardized, or a usual hash commitment, but with the low MC hash. And on the bottom in green, you can see our MPC-friendly commitment with only 2.7 AND gates per bit, meaning an improvement of around factor 5 to the MPC-friendly baseline. So we have an efficient verification inside the protocol. Now, looking at the benchmark results, we implemented an insurance fee calculation with the programming bits of the size of 3 million bits and input by the customer of 448 bits. The baseline protocol here is a maliciously secure PFE protocol without authentication, and on the right side we have our authenticated PFE with both instantiations. One on the left side is standardized with AES SHA-3, and on the right side the MPC-friendly instantiated with low MC. So when first looking at the communication, we achieve an overhead of factor 4 for communication over the non-authenticated PFE. And maybe more interesting, for the runtimes in LAN and in WAN, we get for the MPC-friendly in the LAN setting an overhead of 135, which is huge, but in a standardized setting an overhead of 40. And interestingly, in the WAN setting, so for slow networks, we get an improvement factor of, or an overhead factor of 15 over the baseline PFE. This is the case because low MC reduces AND gates to increase communication efficiency, but therefore it replaces it by a huge bunch of XOR gates. So the slower the network gets, the better our optimized PFE-friendly implementation gets, which is in this example of car insurance pay-as-you-drive fees. Interesting because also a speed of 100 megabit per second might be very optimistic for mobile networks. Okay, now I want to show you some more opportunities with our approach. We can not only achieve authenticated PFE, but we can also authenticate the inputs by the client, so also achieve authenticated data. We could authenticate one out of n functions, such that the company provides more than one function, and the customer can be sure that at least one of these functions is evaluated. We may either reveal which of them, or we also hide it in the circuit. And even without a CA, if there's no trusted party available, we can enforce that the same function is used for multiple customers if they are able to communicate with each other. All right. Now, to conclude my talk, we formulated the construction of authenticated PFE and provided the first implementation, and also invented an MPC-friendly commitment scheme, especially efficient for large inputs. Some open questions that remain. First of all, the obvious one, can we reduce the overhead for authentication? And the second, is it possible to construct a PFE protocol for the linear complexity PFE line of works? Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. Just a quick question. What is, isn't it more friendly, more MPC friendly to have, for example, homomorphic commitments, even though they are based on public key cryptography, they will involve, essentially, like everyone can, you can distribute the shares of the data, the shares of the randomness, everyone can commit locally and then just sum it up and then you get a commitment of the whole data. This is assuming that you work over a prime field that is compatible with, let's say, Pedersen commitments, for example, something like this.
I'm not familiar with this, what is called homomorphic commitments. The problem with this algebraic structures is that the input sizes are very, very large. And yeah, it would be interesting to look into it, but I assume...
So this involves a lot of local computation for sure. But in terms of communication, the algebraic structure actually helps you so that the circuit to compute the commitment is just like an addition, basically. Of course, happy to discuss later, like
okay,
offline.
yeah, that sounds interesting, yeah.
Thank you. Do we have more questions in the room? Looks like no. Then yeah, let's thank Jan